Funding for The Rotor Workshop is provided in part by Hitachi Power Tools, manufacturers of a full range of construction and woodworking power tools. Today, in the Rotor Workshop, we begin a special two-part series creating a unique inlay coffee table. Master craftsmen Bob and Rick Rosendahl show you how to use a beading bit to dress up the legs. You'll also learn the secrets of using the hanger bolt corner block method of mounting a tabletop to any leg system. The inlay coffee table, coming up next in the Rotor Workshop.
Welcome to the Router Workshop. What are we doing today? We've got a neat table here, but it's a two-part deal again, Rick. We're going to do the top. The legs. Rick's going to put some nice beads, I guess, in here, but I'm going to start with the rails, and maybe we can turn it over. They can have a look. Take a quick look here. And tip it back a little bit in here. What we've done this time is not use dovetails, but what we've done is just use a 45 bit to cut a corner. It's square and held in. Maybe a little simpler for you to do, but the leg does tie in across there, Rick.
All right, and then what we have is the way it's tied together is we're going to put a rabbiting bit groove in it and make a little block to fit that in.
That's right. And just put a tie block. And how many we got in there? We got about 5 or 6 of them.
That's right.
That's all we have to make.
All right.
Okay, you take the table and I'll start with the rails.
All right.
First bit I'm going to mount in here, we talked about that 45. There's the 45 bit in it, and I'm going to put it in the router, and then you'll have a better look at it. It's got 2 cutters on it, and it is 90 degrees across the top for 45. We don't need a guide or anything in here, so we'll set it up and get my wrenches and tighten it into place. And then I'll let you have a look at it when I bring it out here. See the angle on top of it? Right down at the very shoulder there is where I'm going to set it. So I got the depth of the full 45 degrees on it, and we'll lock it in here and drop it in. Now, of course, we need a fence because we're going to run them blocks to the fence. So we'll take a fence here, and we'll set it up, and I'll put a clamp on one end because I got to establish some kind of a distance. Now, what the distance I'm going to use here is this. Mathematically, what I'm going to show you, they tell me isn't correct, but I use it because it works. Width of the leg, that's the distance. So if you want to put it in here, back to that point, that would be the width. When you got the leg in your hand, no use of changing anything. Just pull it over and set it right on the point of that 45 on that bit. Pop it down here and put the second clamp on it. Now we got the distance set. Just in case something moved, I'll just check that and it looks good. Now what we need to do is take the face side and keep it up, and we need to run this through here. We're going to run that groove through. Now the problem that might entail here is we might get a little chip out in the front where the bit starts and the back, but I'm not going to worry about it because when I complete this operation, we'll joint the 2 edges. I've made that 1/8 of an inch wider than what we needed. Now we need a push stick. Got a push stick, kind of neat here. When that bottom block wears out, make another one. Got a hand saw grip inside of here, and the block that's glued in gives you pressure, and we need to have some pressure down. Remember, the shape of the bits like that has a tendency to push your stick up. Now we've got to do 2 end rails, and we got 2 long side rails to do. So let's just get some power here and give it a whirl. Get it plugged in. Okay, having completed that operation, we've got this edge that I told you with a little bit of tear out on it, and on one side not as bad as the other. And what I'm going to do is joint that off. So we're going to set this back over here and change cutters, and I will make sure that I unplug it before we do that. And the bit that I'm going to put in is a flush trim bit. This flush trim bit has a bearing on it, but we're going to use the jointer fence instead, so we won't come into play with that one. I got that one really tight in there. We'll take that off, and the bit. I'm going to chuck it up, and then I'll show you and have a better look that way. And I will put my little insert inside of that just to reduce the size of the hole. Got a ring nut on the back bottom side and the flush insert in it, and we need to spin that on there if I can get it just started. Remember, you just finger tighten them up, hold it in there, tighten it down, and let you have a look at it. There's the cutter. Now, I've got a fairly wide piece there, so I'm going to have to use quite a bit of the cutter, and I'll just start there and I can readjust, and I'll show you what we're setting up here. Get rid of a little bit of debris and down in the plate groove there and set it down, lock it in. Now, here's what the fence looks like. When we run something down in there, you've got to be able to take some material off. And you can see their little bump in it. We're going to set that bit up flush with this side, so when I come by, it'll take that, it looks to me like a little under 1/8 of an inch, but that's what it'll take to joint it with. So we'll set it down like that. I've got a little bit of room. Also in here, I've got some room for the debris to get out and a little bit of room at the top for that to run. So now, let's see if my clamps will reach across the top of that. And we're going to isolate that bearing on it, right up flush in it. So we'll tighten it down. And to set that up in here, I'm going to use this brass bar. And I think just about there. If that doesn't work, well, we'll just adjust it with the fine adjusting tool here in a minute. Set that down, tighten it down, put this across, and oh, I'm very, very close there. In fact, I'm happy with that. That looks pretty good. Now, what I need to check, though, is to see if the height of the bit has enough room for cutting on it. I'm going to raise it just a shade in here. That ought to do it. Now, I'm going to come in here, and I'll go in a ways. I'll come to a stop and then show you what I'm taking off in here. So I guess we're just about set to go here for some power. I'll rotate the bits free. Always want to make sure you do that in case it's kind of contact with your fence. Now we're ready. Now, see the nice cut that I've got in here? Pretty hard on that pine to see anything, but maybe I can put a straight edge in there. I just like to show you what I am taking off. I'll turn it over so we get rid of the notch in it. There, maybe you can see that a little better. Now we can show that's what I'm taking off. And I'll take that on either side. Okay, here we go. We're going to join them all. I'll get my hammer out of the way here. Now we got a nice clean edge on all sides in here. What I need to do next is put a slot in here to get our mounting box, and I'm going to put a 1/4 inch slot cutter in. So we need to make another bit change here, so we'll take the clamps off of our jointer fence, and as you can see, we cut up quite a bit of dirt in it. One thing routers are good for, we can make lots of chips with them. And of course, if we make a few mistakes, it's nice to have a fireplace to get rid of them with. Now let's take this down. The slot cutter, again, like I mentioned, was 1/4 inch, and we got to be a little fussy about the height of it. Take that apart, and we'll drop that in here. I'll chuck the bit up first, and then I'll let you look at what I got. And set it inside, and lock it. Remember, this groove's inside and under the table, so it doesn't show. Now, what about the height of that? What we're going to use, we've got to make a block like this. We've got to make a block, and I've got to put a rabbet in it. So the height of that bit up there is where the top of it has to be exactly on here. I'm going to turn this block around so you can have a look the other side. So take your material that you're cutting this block out of and raise that up to the height of that. And that'll give you your height of your bit for it. And set it down. And now we'll drop it back in here. And the next thing we're going to do is set a fence up there. And we'll see if we can get a fence to run in here, and I'm going to need some room for that to run. So what we're going to do is run that clamp down, and we'll clamp one end. We'll clamp one end of this, and then what we'll do is just swing that right into that one end of it. What the cutter will do is just cut us a nice slot to fit in there. Okay, we'll plug it in, get some power, and now we'll do this. I'm going to turn that clamp this way around a little bit, and it'll help me. Now, I got the height inside of there. I'm just going to isolate that bearing. We should be about 3/8 deep with it, so let me just see. I had that thread on that clamp a long ways out there. Now, get something in here and just check that. And I'm going to tap that just back. Looks good to me there. That'll be fine. Now, you want to pick the inside edge. We don't want to run right through. So what I'm going to do is just stop like that, come up, and I'll come out again. This length really doesn't matter. What we need a slot is somewhere in the middle here to get one block. And I think we had 2 on the sides. So let me run those for you. And I got it plugged in. We'll just have a look here. Always get lots of groove in. See the nice little groove in it? What that's designed for is your hold-down block to fit inside like that, put your screw in and hold your tabletop on, and it comes out flush on the other side. Okay, let's finish them off. Now, we need some fancy decoration on the bottom of those, and Rick's got that set up over there working on the table legs, so we'll let him continue these also. Now, the only thing I have to do is make that block up, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that. We're going to use a rabbiting bit, so I'll make a bit change here and put a rabbiting bit in. The thing that we have to do is, those little hold-downs that we're using, or little blocks in there, are pretty small. So what we're going to do is put it together in one piece, and then we can take them to the saw and saw them apart and get as many blocks as you need in it. Now, let's just see what we got here. I'll chuck this rabbiting bit up, and we'll show you what it's like. There it is there. And there's the rabbiting bit. Now, depth of that, the depth of that will be 1/2 inch. So we'll use our 1/2 inch bar in here, and we need to be 1/2 inch to the top of that cutter. 3/4 inch, 1/4 inch to fit the groove, 1/2 inch taken out. So that's how we do that. Pop it in. Now back to a fence. And again, we need a clamp on either end. So we'll set that up. And I think that'll run free about there. We'll isolate that bearing. This is only going to take a second to run these. And we'll see what the bearing says. And the bearing says, hey, we're just touching, so we'll just tap it in with the fine adjusting tool, and it looks just great. Okay, here's the block. What we're going to do with that block, just about lost that, we're going to run along the end grain. Don't run on the side because you got no strength in it. Run along the end, put it together, turn it this way, then we can cut them off into whatever shapes you like. We'll probably cut it down the middle here, and then we'll cut off the pieces that we need from there. We need 6 blocks. So let me just run this. Whoops, not going to run anything, am I? If we get some power there, we will. And we got it, and away we go. There's the rabbit inside of it, ready to go. We can cut them up into our pieces. Now we need to do is just check on Rick here with the legs.
Now what we need, we've got a nice clean V, so when we drill on this, we can go straight in nice and easy. It's kind of tough going on an angle on the edge here with your drill bits. Okay, that's why we're putting the V in place. Let's finish off these cuts now. Now that we've completed that, the next operation is to put the bead shape down all three sides of the legs, leaving the inside still sharp. So I'm going to put these aside now for a moment, and I'm going to change the bit to an edge beating bit. And to do that, we're going to have to take down the fence. And we'll get that out of the way. Let's bring up the tool. Make sure she's unplugged. Now, a little trick about this edge beating bit is the fact that it has a bearing on the top, but we can't use the bearing because it doesn't operate that way. So I'm going to bring it out here. Here's the bit. And it's got a bearing on the top, but we can't use the bearing for what we're looking for. What we're going to do is keep it just on the fence, so it's just touching the edge of this. And I'll just show you how to do that when I load it in place here. The next thing that's important is once I've got it loaded in here, I'm going to show you the height that we have to have. This is a little concerned about this particular way of cutting, that you have to make sure you do certain things a certain way or it doesn't look very good. So we're going to turn the bit around. We have to make it flush. So I'll just run it up to the edge here and then run it around and point out where I'm looking. We want to make sure that we're flush to this point here. And now when the fence comes in place, it has to be right flush to the inside of that radius. If it's not going to look very well. Now we'll show you a couple of ways in which we can set this up so to show you how it works well. Let's clear the dirt out of here so when we put that fence on there it'll work fine. All right, let's go to the fence now. We're going to clamp it down on the one side, and the clamps are right in here. So we'll slip the clamp down on this side. And I'm just going to look down at this and see if I can get it close enough, because we're going to run a practice piece on this before we put it on our material. And that looks pretty good right there. Any movements or adjustments that I might have to make, I can do that with a hammer. All right, so we're going to take this piece here, we're going to mold it, and then I'm going to stop and I'll show you what I'm looking for. All right, let's plug it in and make our test cut. I don't know if you can see this, but I'll run it up on the top edge here. You notice I've got it's a little bit on the flat edge right now. You can see the flat piece on the side. What I need to do now is make it so that I have a little bit more cutter. Now I'm going to roll it around the side here a bit, and I'm going to draw out what I'm looking for. You see this line here? It's coming like more and more like a shape of a point. When it comes to a complete point, that means that you're right on that edge, and that's what we're looking for. So I'll just take a second here now and just use my hammer and just give her a slight tap out, and let's run it one more time. All right. Back to this one more time. So you can see this right now. I just see it coming to the point. That means that the round is just touching flat with this flush piece here, and that makes it perfect. Now when I make the cut on it, it's going to be a nice rounded bead, and if you look at this from the overhead, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's not touching the bearing at all. All right? So now we've got the sample piece. I'm going to take all the side rails that I'm working on. Now there's one thing you want to look at when you're doing the side rails. The ones with the slot cutter on the side, that's where the tabletop comes into place. So we want to put the molded edge away from the slot cutter. So let's set our pieces up so that we've got it so it's away from the slot cutter. I'll bring all the pieces over here, set them on the table. And the way I've got them set up is so that all you need to do is pick the piece, drop it down, and mold it. So if you make all the order of the pieces right before you start, you're going to have less chance of making a mistake and getting yourself into trouble. All right, let's cut it. I've got all the rails done right now. The next operation is to do the legs. Now we're just going to leave the setup exactly the same. We're going to use this bit one more time here, and we're going to do both corners. So let's bring the pieces out here that need to be cutted on the sides. And we have to be careful that we make sure that we've got all the right pieces. Now you notice I've got this V side here. We don't want to cut this edge. Okay, so we're going to cut down this side. I'm going to flip it around, rotate it, put it back down, and we'll make the mold. So I'm going to show you that, and let's see what we've got for the edge piece. Now, if I flip this around, it sort of looks like you've got a bit of a quarter mold on each one of these pieces here. I'm going to go ahead and finish all the rest of these pieces now.
Now it's time for Tips from the Workshop, Viewer Mail, and Tricks of the Trade on RotorBit's Tips and Wood Chips.
When you want to mount a tabletop to your frame of your coffee table, here's how we do it. We're going to use these small mounting blocks. If you look at them, they've got a rabbet on the bottom, and they're already set and cut so they fit into the grooves. Here's how we started. We've got the 3/8 rabbet that we're putting down a large block. Then you size the block to a smaller piece. And after you're done that, you want to put the screw holes that mount the block in place. Now, one thing you want to make sure before you start putting the screws into your tabletop is you want to make sure that you test it to make sure that the screws do not come through to the top. They fit in nicely into the groove that we've made here, and they slide in place. You mount those close to your corner where your legs are, put your screws in place, and you've got your tabletop mounted to your frame.
Rick, you brought a lot of pieces.
I got the pieces here. Let's
see you
just
started-
get this started together. You got to be a bit careful here on the...
You got the power screwdriver there.
Yeah.
I'll hold these.
Tighten there.
Now, I'll turn it around even.
Yeah.
So you can keep in the same action here. Where did my X go? X went on the other side there. We got these all faced in here, so I'll make sure.
All right. Get the next one in place. Is this so it works, right?
I think so. If it doesn't fit.
You have to make sure that you have the slots all going the same direction,
That'd be
right?
a good idea. I think we're going to have to end for end something.
And you're
here.
going to have to give me a couple more screws.
Oh, I need 2 more screws. I'll let you have that.
Okay.
I'll keep it flush on this side.
We don't have all the screws in, okay, but we're keep it flush. And we'll tighten this one down. And we'll put one more over here because it's just going to hold it together while we stand it up and put the legs in the corner, right?
Yeah, we'll fasten it later anyway, so it'll be fine. That's good.
All right. Here, put
I'll put those over here. Should we set it down like this?
Yes.
And
I give you 2 legs, and I have 2 legs.
the only thing we don't have, we'll find a hole.
One.
That's how they do it.
Now, all we have left to do on this is the top.
We need to do a top.
I hope we've inspired you to get your router out of the box and join us next time right here in the Router Workshop.
We'd like to hear from you. You can email us at the address on your screen. Send your comments, questions, or project ideas to the Router Workshop, Post Office Box 608, Chamberlain, South Dakota 57325. Or in Canada, the Router Workshop, Post Office Box 280, Ely, Manitoba, ROH-OHO. To learn more about the Router Workshop, visit us at the internet address on your screen. In our next episode of the Router Workshop, router experts Bob and Rick Rosendahl show you how to make the pattern for the inlay fixture, their unique method of creating the cavity for the inlay, and how to cut the contrasting material for the inlay itself. Use these techniques to create your own truly unique look. The Inlay Coffee Table Part 2. Next time in the Router Workshop. Funding for The Router Workshop is provided in part by Hitachi Power Tools, manufacturers of a full range of construction and woodworking power tools. You can now order router bits, tips, and wood chips, a 45-minute video featuring Bob and Rick Rosendahl's personally selected shop tips and router techniques. To order your copy of this home video for $19.95 plus $4.95 shipping and handling, have your credit card ready and call 1-800-803-1449.